before we get started, I hope all of you are able to log into CrowdStrike console and you have been able to create a free trial account with Amazon Web Services or with Microsoft Azure. If there is any participant who is facing any issue, you know Farhan. Farhan is supporting us in this training session. So on the WhatsApp group that I have created, please make sure that you drop a note to Farhan, tag Farhan, and Farhan will help you with getting your access to the portal fixed if there is any issue or getting you access to a free tier account from any cloud service provider. So I provided you my introduction and provided you the walkthrough of table of content for CrowdStrike Certified Falcon Administrator course that we are focusing on in this session. There will be multiple modules. We started with CCFA module. So I provided you a quick walkthrough of what the official TOC looks like and what content or what topics are we going to cover in this session. Then I provided you access to CrowdStrike console. Each one of you have access to CrowdStrike console with admin privileges. So since you've been provided access with admin privileges, you need to make sure that you exercise caution while you make any configuration changes. All of you are using the same console and all of you have the same level of access, which also means that you need to make sure that you are only working with your configuration. Please do not modify, delete the configuration done by other participants. How do you differentiate your configuration from others? While we do a hands-on lab, I'll talk about the processes and best practices that how do you need to configure anything. So you will have your first name as prefix to every configuration so that from the list of configurations, if there are multiple policies, everyone would know which policy belongs to which participant, and you would only deal with your configuration and your policies. So that's how we all will use the same console as administrator, and we will ensure working within our scope of endpoints. So the endpoints that you will onboard in the console, you will only stick to those endpoints. You will configure policies and controls for those endpoints as if you are doing it for the entire organization. Whether you configure for one endpoint or 1,000 endpoint or 100,000 endpoint, the concept will remain the same. The configuration steps will remain the same. So that's what we need to do. The second thing is I assume that you all of you have created a free tier account with AWS or with Microsoft Azure. We will use this account to provision and manage endpoints, and we will use the same account to cover the cloud specialist module also, wherein we will have AWS account
Sir, we
integrated.
can use VMware workstation in local machine.
Absolutely. You can use that also. All we need is a virtual server or a virtual machine that we want to onboard into CrowdStrike. Okay. So whether you use VMware, whether you use Hyper-V, whether you use a cloud account, it's totally up to you. The reason I promote usage of cloud service providers or cloud account because it is quick to provision virtual servers. It hardly takes 3 to 5 minutes to provision a virtual machine or a virtual server. And if things do not go as expected, you can terminate it and provision another one. However, in VMware and Hyper-V, to build a virtual machine, it will take time because it has to install the operating system, and operating system activity sometimes takes 30 to 45 minutes. That's the reason I discourage that part. However, you can, yes, you can use it. You just need to make sure that you build some uh, virtual machines in advance. Let's say a Windows virtual machine with a client operating system, a Windows server operating system, a Linux virtual machine, a Mac OS, a Chrome OS, whichever endpoint OS you are willing to onboard into console and look at the security aspect. Please make sure that you have those endpoint OS ready if it is VMware or Hyper. Okay. Then we Then we basically talked about endpoint protection platform versus endpoint detection. This is something that I will be talking about today. And CrowdStrike product and SKU and pricing. So I talked about Go, Falcon, Go Pro Enterprise SKUs of CrowdStrike and the difference in terms of capabilities that you get, also the pricing part. That's what we covered yesterday. Now let's understand the agenda for today. What are we going to do today? So today we will start with the session and we'll look at certain prerequisites and certain basic terminologies. We'll look at the difference between anti-malware, endpoint protection platform versus endpoint detection and response. We look at CrowdStrike product overview and history. CrowdStrike has multiple modules. I'll talk about all of those modules. Then I'll talk about CrowdStrike Falcon architecture. So CrowdStrike is a brand name. It's a business. It's a company name. And Falcon is the security product. So we focus on Falcon. It's Falcon, which is the security solution of CrowdStrike, because CrowdStrike has other solutions also. So Falcon is the security solution that is primarily used for managing, protecting endpoints. And they have picked up this name from the word Falcon, which uh, which has capabilities which are quite special and unique to it. That's the reason they picked up this name. So CrowdStrike Falcon architecture we'll look at. Then we'll talk about the design and architecture aspects for a large enterprise. So before we start to onboard an endpoint, we first need to act as an architect or a consultant, and we need to create a design and architecture aspects of it. So if you are going to deploy CrowdStrike for an organization of sizable scale and complexity, of a certain size, scale, and complexity, what should be your approach? What is the starting point? What should be the stages in the middle? And how you should complete that onboarding and move on to the next customer. So that's what I'll talk about. I'll also I'll also talk about a high-level design, deployment, configuration, implementation, and management steps. CCFA, as I said, it is Falcon Administrator. So you will not have separate architect who will be responsible for deploying or onboarding organizations for CrowdStrike, Falcon, or endpoint security. The administrators are primarily expected to have the design and architect knowledge. So I'll also talk about that. However, this is outside of the scope of CCFA exam. In CCFA certification, they don't expect you to know design and architecture aspects. But from the interview perspective, from working in the production environment perspective, it is very important that you understand this aspect, because this is what your customer would expect you to know. When you connect with them, when you offer them to onboard their endpoints into CrowdStrike, they would expect you to possess this knowledge. When you appear for an interview and you say that I'm appearing for CrowdStrike administrator interview or CrowdStrike architect interview, this is what they will expect you to know, whether you have deployed CrowdStrike in the past for organizations. If yes, then were they of a sizable scale and complexity? Were they Was there any adherence to compliance and standards that you also took into account while deploying it? All that they will expect you to know. So I'll talk about that. Then I'll give you a quick walkthrough of CrowdStrike console, the walkthrough of CrowdStrike console from left to right, top to bottom, and center. All the options I will talk about. After that, we'll provision some endpoints in the lab environment. So when I say lab environment, this is our AWS cloud, AWS on your type 1 or type 2 hypervisor if you are using any. So type 1 hypervisor is bare metal hypervisor, wherein you deploy the virtualization software on the top of a hardware, just like VMware ESX host, and then you create virtual machines. Type 2 hypervisor basically means a hypervisor which you deploy on the top of a server, for example, your laptop, which is also known as hosted OS hypervisor, and then you provision virtual machines there, which is Microsoft Hyper-V. Uh, Microsoft Hyper-V, it is both type 1 and type 2, VMware Workstation, which is type 2, and Oracle VirtualBox. Microsoft also used to have a hypervisor, which is for client virtualization virtual PC, which they deprecated, and now they use Hyper-V for both server and OS virtualization, client OS virtualization. Then I'll talk about user management, role and access scope. So this is what we intend to do today. And if we are left with some time, then we will cover more aspects. Okay. So before we get started with the agenda for today, do I have any participant who has any question for any topic that we discussed today?
Good morning, Raghuveer.
Yes, Hardik. Good morning.
Uh, so I would like to add one more thing here in the first part itself, anti-malware, EDR, EPP. Along with this, if we can include XDR comparison also.
Sure. I'll share a document from CrowdStrike wherein CrowdStrike is comparing an antivirus with the endpoint protection platform, with endpoint detection and response, with managed detection and response, and with extended detection and response, which is XDR. So I'll share that and I'll also talk about up to certain extent. Okay.
Sure. Another thing
Hmm.
about the point number 4, design architecture aspects of the large app. After that, if we can talk about some migration part, like if there is already some antivirus or some XDR platform is already there, and the customer wants to move to CrowdStrike. So in that scenario, what all needs to be taken into consideration?
Okay. Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Great. Any other participant?
Yeah, Raghu, Jyoti this side.
Yes, Jyoti.
Yeah, so in this course, like anywhere, is it covered like how like CrowdStrike can be integrated with like some other platform, like maybe vulnerability management platform, Tenable One, Qualys, or like is there any documentation provided by CrowdStrike?
There should be a use case. Why would you want to integrate CrowdStrike with vulnerability management?
Actually, in my current project, there is a discussion going on, so that's why I
Okay.
was looking like in although it is not finalized, but they are discussing this point with Tenable support team and CrowdStrike. So that's why I was hoping like if there is any.
Okay. See, CrowdStrike has its own vulnerability management module. It
Okay.
doesn't, you don't require a separate vulnerability management solution, right?
Mm. Mhm.
CrowdStrike, since it's an endpoint detection and response solution, it
Mm.
can identify vulnerabilities from the endpoint. And
Okay.
it can then be integrated with a software packaging solution like WSUS, SCCM, TANIUM, and with that solution, you can also mitigate vulnerabilities if it requires to update or upgrade the operating system, if it requires to deploy certain security patches, all that can be done, right? So
Okay.
CrowdStrike, that's what CrowdStrike is doing. Now, CrowdStrike can be integrated with SIEM and source solution because those solutions analyze the logs. So if it
Okay.
is about integration of CrowdStrike with Microsoft Sentinel,
Mm.
integration of CrowdStrike with Splunk and QRadar, Alert Logic, Securonix, Logarithm, or Google Chronicle, which is SecOps now, that is very much possible because that's where you are sending CrowdStrike logs to and logs to a Siemens source solution. Or you can integrate CrowdStrike with an XDR solution. An XDR combines multiple security solutions into one. So you can send CrowdStrike incidents into an XDR solution so that you have single pane of glass for all the security products, and they are dumping their investigations, their alerts, their incidents into XDR, and your security team would just look into XDR rather looking into the dashboard of multiple security solution, which
Okay.
becomes a cumbersome task and also becomes difficult to correlate, to perform correlation when there are incidents related to endpoints related to users across
Mhm.
multiple areas. For example, there is an incident related to a user that is related to email security, but then it has triggered from an endpoint. So now you're dealing with email security solution, you're dealing with IAM solution, you're dealing with EDR solution. So XDR will combine the detections from all of these solutions into one console, and it will become easy to do the correlation. And if you have integration with AI, then your life becomes more easier because now AI will do all the correlation and summarize the incidents. Okay.
Okay.
So I don't see a use case of integrating CrowdStrike with a vulnerability management solution because it has its own vulnerability management module. However,
Okay.
if your organization is looking forward to do an integration, then CrowdStrike supports API-based integration. So you will need to identify whether you want to bring vulnerability management, vulnerability management findings. So let's say vulnerability management solution, when you run a vulnerability scan, it identifies multiple vulnerabilities across an endpoint, or
Okay.
a vulnerability across many endpoints, right? The same vulnerability across hundreds of endpoints, or
Mm.
multiple vulnerabilities on one endpoint, and you constitute that as an incident. You want your
Okay.
security team to investigate why multiple vulnerabilities are present on one endpoint, or why a specific vulnerability is present across multiple endpoints. In that case, you can integrate vulnerability management solution with CrowdStrike so that those vulnerabilities are converted into an incident present into CrowdStrike console, and your security team will pick those incidents and investigate and remediate it. That
Okay.
is probably the use case. But for an enterprise, CrowdStrike itself has its own vulnerability management module. You might
Okay.
want to use that module. Okay.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I have one question. Like as we have seen, like there are lots of EDR, XDR solution already in the market, like Sentinel One, or like from Microsoft we have a Defender. Okay, from Palo Alto we have a Cortex, EDR, XDR, and now we have a CloudStrike. So when as a architecture or as a from the sales architecture perspective, if we go to the market and how to pitch in, like what solution is the best solution, because as per the Gartner we know CloudStrike has the upper hand in the market, but there are also other solutions in the market where customer is more in terms of money, like the investment perspective. So how to overcome this type of challenges?
Okay. Yeah, I'll come to that question. It will be answered when I explain this part. Okay, let's move on, guys. So let's understand the basics or how this has evolved over a period of time. Uh, So some of the participants are probably in your 30s and 40s, or probably in your 50s, and you have seen how technology has evolved over a period of time. For example, when I got my first desktop, that was in the year 2000, 26 years ago, I got my uh, first desktop, and I actually got it assembled from a local local market. There is a local market in Delhi at Nehru Place, where you have all computers, all IT equipments available. So I got it assembled, and I had Windows. At that point in time, it was Windows 98, and then I basically upgraded it to Windows XP. So that's where I got my first system. At that point in time, if there was any threat that people would know, that was nothing but virus. We would only talk about virus. So IT consumers or laptop desktop users, laptop used to be a Griffin goods or luxury at that point in time. So let's talk about desktops. So I desktop users, they were only concerned with virus. They just wanted to make sure that my system doesn't get a virus in it. And for them, virus basically means something that would interrupt the functioning of their system. Interrupt the functioning, it would probably make the system slow. It would not allow that system to access certain websites over the internet or open certain files. If they are able to open files, those files are corrupted. The data is not, read the data is not there in the readable format. That's what virus would mean. And most of the people, they would think that if the files are not accessible, if the system is running slow, it's a virus. And then they would use an antivirus solution to scan the device, to scan the endpoint or the system. The solution would then run a scan. If there is any issue, it would fix it, and they would see the difference in the performance. That's how it used to happen. That was 25 years ago. Technology evolved over a period of time. New threat vectors got introduced. When I say threat vectors, threat actors, these are some terminologies of cybersecurity. I'll share some documentation with you. That documentation contains definitions of these terminologies, that what is a threat actor, what is a threat vector, what do you mean by an adversary, what is a threat, what are different types of threats, uh, how threats have evolved over a period of time, what are the current threats that organizations are dealing with. All that will be part of that documentation. So it started with viruses, and to tackle viruses, we had antivirus solution. The technology continues to evolve, and then the concept of Trojan horse, worm, spyware, adware, it also introduced. So the users, computer users, they started experiencing new type of threat, a sophisticated threat, probably advanced in nature, which an antivirus solution was incapable of discovering, protecting, or remediating. So that is where we came up with anti-malware solution. Now, what is a malware? Malware is a malicious piece of code or program that is designed to corrupt a computing system, to slow a computing system, to affect the performance of it, or to steal some data from that system, or to corrupt data, or to spread across the network from that system. That's what a malware is. So a spyware is a malware, a ransomware is a malware, virus is a malware, worm is a malware, Trojan is a malware. These are all malwares. So slowly and gradually, these uh, additional threats, they got introduced, right? Now, when these threats got introduced, the security professionals, they also continue to work towards protecting the devices, endpoints, and systems, and they continue to, they continue to introduce new type of security solutions. So we had antivirus, anti-malware, anti-spyware, anti-ransomware solutions existed. Now, ransomware is one threat that still exists today. These days, we don't bother about viruses. Ask this question to yourself: when did you speak this word virus? I'm saying not in the context of corona, in the context of computing systems. Probably long time back, because nobody talks about viruses today. If we talk about anything today, then we talk about sophisticated threats, which are ransomware. There has been a lot of ransomware attack, or they continue to exist as we speak today. At any point in time, across the computing world, there are bots, there are AI enabled bots who are executing ransomware attacks, or who are trying to scan systems across the world to look for any open port or any attack surface that they can exploit, that they can take advantage of. So that's what continues to happen today. So ransomware is one threat which still exists today. Viruses have almost, I would say, disappeared, or they have taken a new shape today. Then comes endpoint protection platform. So when these threats continues to exist, the independent software vendors or security software providers, which are organizations who basically develop these security solutions, they came up with endpoint protection platform. So these platform combines the capability of an antivirus, an anti-malware, an anti-ransomware, anti-spyware, anti-adware. So these are endpoint protection platform. However, the challenge with these platform was that they would only be able to discover and quarantine. They are not able to remediate. Remediate basically means that they cannot create certain configurations that will proactively protect your endpoints from those threats in the future. So it's like a solution which knows what a threat is. It is able to discover the threat on the endpoint, and it is able to contain it. But it doesn't have response capability. It doesn't have configurations through which you can proactively contain that threat. It doesn't have configurations through which you can uh, create certain automation so that the threat is automatically remediated. That is where EDR comes into the picture. So after EPP, EDR was introduced, endpoint detection and response. Now, what does the solution does? We also call it endpoint detection and threat response, EDTR. So some you will find on some technical journals or technical articles or technical blog posts, they also call EDR as EDTR, endpoint detection and threat response. Now, what endpoint detection and threat response is doing? It is capable of detecting threats on the endpoint as well as it can respond to those threats. How it responds to those threats? You can create configurations. Configurations will then look for activities on the endpoint, on write activities, on execute activities. If there is any file that is written to the endpoints, the configuration will be quick to scan that file. If there is any software or application is downloaded in the endpoints, it will be quick to scan that software and application. If there is any process which is executed on the endpoint, which is initiated by the user or from command prompt or from a third party application or from a software existing software or application which is there on the endpoint, it will be quick to analyze it, to scan it for vulnerabilities, for misconfigurations, for indicator of compromise, and it will be quick to respond to it. So that's what EDR does. And that's where CrowdStrike comes into the picture. So this is where CrowdStrike was introduced. So back in the year 2012, which is 14 years ago, 14, 15 years ago, when cyber threats became very prominent and the entire IT industry was suffering from those threats, somebody, I'm saying two professionals, they came up with this idea that let's build something which is far more sophisticated, far more advanced than an endpoint protection platform, than an antivirus and anti-malware. And that's where CrowdStrike was born. CrowdStrike endpoint detection and response solution was introduced. So this solution can provide your endpoints protection in near real time, not in real time. There is nothing in real time in this world. Real time means as it happens. There is always a delay of a couple of seconds, probably milliseconds or seconds. That's the reason we say it near real time, right? So nothing is real time in this world. It's near real time. So it provides near real time protection to your endpoints. And what kind of protections it provides from? It provides protections from indicators of attack, indicators of compromise, indicators of misconfiguration. For that, I have this URL. When you go through this URL, these URLs basically talk about the difference between endpoint protection versus endpoint detection and response. These URL talk about the difference between indicators of attack versus indicators of compromise, and these URLs, and they are all from CrowdStrike, official documentation. So you can trust this documentation for authenticity, for accurate information, and for up-to-date information. And then there is another URL, which is the difference between EDR, MDR, and XDR. So I'll share these URLs with you that will help you understand the basic difference between these technologies. Now coming back to EDR. So CrowdStrike is an EDR solution. It is there to protect your endpoints. It has the capability to protect the endpoints. So the question is, what is an endpoint? What constitutes an endpoint? That is where these are the endpoints. So an endpoint could be a desktop, it could be a laptop, it could be a server, it could be a mobile phone or a smartphone, it could be a tablet, it could be a portable desktop assistant, it could be an IoT device also, because we use in manufacturing units, in in manufacturing units or in some other businesses, we use IoT and OT devices also. They also are part of endpoint category. So IoT devices or any cloud instance. What do you mean by cloud instance? It is Azure Virtual Machine, AWS EC2 instance, GCP Compute Engine instance. So cloud virtual servers or virtual machines also come into the endpoint category. These are the things that CrowdStrike is protecting. Now we also have additional, so we have routers and switches. Can CrowdStrike protect a router and switch? No. Can CrowdStrike protect a printer? Because printer is equally important for my organization. I don't want my printer to get hacked into so that hackers are sending print command and my papers are wasted, or my printer is probably printing documents which I have not sent instructions for. Can it protect a printer? No, it cannot do that. So for CrowdStrike or for any EDR solution, the endpoints would constitute only these devices, which is desktop, laptop, server, mobile phones, tablet, PDA, iPad, IoT devices, and cloud instances or cloud virtual servers. These are the endpoints. Okay. Then comes, so this is your endpoint security solution. Now here I have written proactive and then I've written reactive. So after endpoint detection and response, there is another security solution that we use in the market, which is known as security information and event management solution. And it also has another flavor, which is SOAR, which is the automation layer of it. So these SIEM and SOAR solution, their job is to receive logs or their job. So they basically uh, they basically store logs from different devices, which includes endpoints, which includes other devices which EDR can't protect. For example, routers and switches, firewall, your VPN solution, right? Printer. So multiple devices, and it includes endpoints also, multiple security solutions or multiple IT equipments which has the capability to generate logs. Those logs will be consolidated will because logs have different format. So they basically first parse the logs, they store them into a log repository, and then this solution is able to analyze those logs and it will be quick to provide an insights into any attack that has already happened. So it's a reactive solution. So it basically provides you insights into certain actions or activities which were executed or happened in the past. So let's say if there was an attempt to access a server by somebody, that somebody could be an employee, it could be an insider, or it could be a threat actor who is trying to access that server from outside the corporate network from internet. So if there was an attempt to access to log into a server, and if that attempt was successful or failure, that attempt resulted in certain logs on the server. Those logs will be analyzed by this solution and it will be quick to inform that there was an attempt to gain access to this server, which constitute a brute force attack, which is a type of threat in the cybersecurity. So this is the reactive solution. They react, they work on reactive security. So every organization should have a combination of proactive plus reactive solution. They should have a proactive solution in place. They should have a reactive solution in place. Then comes this is how technology has evolved. And I'm trying to start from the year 2000 and take you to the year 2026. Okay. So after Siemens source solution, then another concept was introduced, which was managed detection and response. Now, how it is different from EDR and SIEM? Managed detection and response basically means that an organization doesn't need to spend capital or resources or hire employees to manage the security. They can basically outsource their security services to other organizations who act as managed security service provider, which is known as MSSP. And these managed security service provider, they will provide 24 across 7 round the clock security support to the organization. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that the EDR solution, the security vendors like CrowdStrike, Palo Alto, Zscaler, they also provide access to the customer to their expert who are working round the clock to protect customer interest. That's what managed detection and response is all about, which is nothing but outsourcing your security support to a third party, or to the security service provider itself. That's managed detection and response. Then comes extended detection and response, which is next layer of it. Now, extended detection and response basically means that you combine multiple security capability into one solution. So, for example, vulnerability management through Qualys or Tenable or Rapid7, email security from from Proofpoint or from Microsoft Defender for 365, or any security solution. So multiple security solutions like firewall secure, IDS and IPS capability, VPN capability, they're all security services, network security services, identity and access management security services. So combining multiple security services into one dashboard is what XDR is all about. So XDR solution has EDR capabilities, they have SIEM and SOAR capabilities, they have vulnerability management capabilities, they have CSPM capabilities, they have CWPP capabilities, they have multiple capabilities. So it's not a new technology. It is like you combine multiple security technologies into one solution and you call it XDR solution. That's what XDR is all about. Then comes some additional security terminologies that you need to be aware of. For example, cloud security posture management. Now, what is cloud security posture management? Most of the organizations today use cloud service providers to host their workloads and applications, Azure, AWS, GCP. Now, when they host their workloads and applications in cloud, they lose end-to-end control on them. They are not managing the infrastructure, the physical layer, which is the hardware, networking, connectivity, power, all that they are not managing. It is managed by the service provider. Then service provider has different models, service delivery models, which is infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. Now, based on these models, the responsibilities of security keep shifting from customer to service provider and vice versa. So cloud security posture management solution is a solution, security solution that has the capability to analyze the cloud configurations of your Azure subscription or tenant, Entra tenant, configurations of your AWS accounts, configurations of your GCP projects and organization, and it will be quick to tell you that this configuration is not correct. This configuration is missing. This is misconfigured. That is known as cloud security posture management. Then comes cloud workload protection platform. Now, this solution basically protects the workloads in the cloud. Now, workload is a server. You will say that the server can be protected by EDR. It is true. But what about a database in cloud? What about a network in cloud? What about an analytics service in cloud? What about a storage service in cloud, object storage, file storage, block storage? They're also workloads. So this solution has the capability to also include protection for additional services which are outside of the purview of EDR. That's CWPP. Then comes CIEM, which is Cloud Identity and Entitlement Management. This solution is primarily protecting the identities, your employee accounts, your service accounts, service principals. Then we have Cloud Access Security Broker. This solution basically provides secure access to cloud applications, cloud workloads. So if you have employees sitting on premises, they're trying to access an application which is hosted in cloud, how do you securely ensure access to that application is CASB? So it provides context-based protection, access control. Then comes Secure Access Service Edge, which is an advanced version of CASB. CASB has certain limitations, which was taken care by SESI. Now the combination of CSPM and CWPP is CNAP, which is known as Cloud Native Application Protection Platform. So CNAP combines the capability of CSPM and CWPP, and up to certain extent, the capability of CASB and SESI also. Now, the point that I'm trying to make here is that security is a vast domain. There is a lot that happens in security domain, but once you start working in security domain, you will be quick to connect the dots and you will understand that there are multiple varieties, but when you combine them, they can be primarily categorized into two solutions. One is proactive security, the other is reactive security. So everything can be categorized into these two solutions. And that is where XDR comes into the picture. XDR is a combination of proactive plus reactive security. So we have Palo Alto Cortex XDR, we have Microsoft Defender XDR, we have an XDR solution from other independent software vendors also. These XDR solutions combine multiple capabilities together. Now, who has provided all of these concepts? Who introduced these terminologies? I'm saying who introduced virus, who introduced malware, or who spoke this word for the first time, spyware, and then it became talk of the town, and then everyone started saying spyware, spyware, spyware. So it is Gartner. Gartner is one business or one firm or one company that has a great influence in the software security industry, IT industry. When Gartner says something, it becomes a mandate for ISVs, for managed service providers, for businesses, because Gartner conducts extensive surveys. Gartner has its own security experts who are constantly discovering, or who are constantly analyzing threats, or who are constantly analyzing how this industry is moving forward. So Gartner comes up with a magic quadrant, which is an yearly method of sharing its outcome. And this magic quadrant is available for multiple solution categories for cloud service provider, EDR, SIEM and source solution, application, operating system. And Gartner, when Gartner says something, it becomes a mandate, as I said. So there was a time when Gartner said that these solutions are not sufficient because they are handling one security capability. An antivirus is only protecting systems from virus. What about spyware? An antivirus doesn't understand a spyware. So there was an anti-spyware solution. What about ransomware? Antivirus cannot protect from a ransomware attack. So there was an anti-ransomware solution. That's where Gartner came up. Gartner said that instead of spending money in 4 different solutions, can we not combine the capability and have one solution in place so that businesses get some comfort? That's where endpoint protection platform was introduced. So Gartner said something and a new technology version was introduced. After a couple of months or year, Gartner realized that IT has grown many-fold. Every other business is using computing systems, and now it is becoming difficult to manage them manually. So there has to be a response layer on the top of EPP, Endpoint Protection Platform. And that's where EDR was introduced. So Gartner came up with this word back in 2011. Gartner, in its report, said we should have a solution that should have response capabilities that can respond to threats, automatically respond to threats on endpoints. And then Gartner said EDR. And all of a sudden, McAfee, Symantec, AVG, Avast, CrowdStrike, Sentinel-1, they actually all those existing security vendors, they listened to that recommendation. They did some tweaking to their existing solution, added some additional module, and then they rebranded it as EDR solution. That's how it has evolved over a period of time. Then Gartner came one fine day and said that automated response is okay, but then there has to be a responsible party who will be responsible for managing the threats, because threats are not those which are known to everyone. Threats are also zero-day attacks. So who will manage from zero-day attack? Nobody has knowledge about it. Who will scan the internet all the time? Who will be responsible for cyber threat intel? That is where MDR came into the picture. Organizations came up and they started promoting themselves as MDR solutions and said that my people will protect your environment 24 across 7. Later on, Gartner, during COVID period, Gartner came up with another study, and Gartner said that security has become so distributed that organizations are ending up using multiple security solutions. For vulnerability management, they are using Qualys. For email security, they are using a different solution. For endpoint security, they are using CrowdStrike. For network security, they are using a firewall, next-gen firewall. For data security, they are using DLP solutions. For GRC, they are using some other solution. For cloud security, they are using CSPM solution. For for access governance, they are using CASB solutions. So security world has completely become distributed, and it has become very difficult for organizations to manage the show. So we should have a capability that will combine all these security solution into one, and that's where XDR was introduced. So when Gartner said something, the impact was global. All security service providers, they combined their security solutions into one, one bucket or one umbrella, and they started rebranding them, selling them as XDR solution. And today, Microsoft Defender XDR, Palo Alto Cortex XDR, and other XDR solutions. So that's how this technology has evolved over a period of time by by active influence from Gartner, Dow Jones, Activa, Forrester. These are the analyst firm that has great impact. That's how security has evolved. So if you ask me today, what security solutions do organizations use? Then they are using EDR solutions. So they are using XDR solutions, which combines the capabilities of multiple solutions into one place. So where exactly CrowdStrike comes into the picture? Does CrowdStrike have XDR capabilities? Probably not today, because CrowdStrike does not have a combined dashboard as we speak today. For an XDR solution, it is imperative to have a combined dashboard. So CrowdStrike has all the capabilities. CrowdStrike has this. So CrowdStrike has EDR solution, which combines all of these solutions, right? So CrowdStrike has EDR. CrowdStrike has next-gen SIEM solution, which is more of a reactive security. CrowdStrike has MDR, which I showed you yesterday. CrowdStrike has security experts who can work on your behalf, who can protect your environment. CrowdStrike has CSPM solution. CrowdStrike has CWPM, CNAP solution. CrowdStrike has identity security solution. CrowdStrike is lacking here. CrowdStrike doesn't have a context-aware security management solution, which they are trying to inculcate into their CIEM solution, which is CrowdStrike Certified Identity Specialist. Then CrowdStrike also has a solution that is currently in beta mode, which is AI security. So all AI agents, agentic AIs, RAG, LLMs, to protect all of this AI world, CrowdStrike is building a solution which is in beta mode. So I have a separate CID where I have access to that solution, and I am quite surprised to see the capability of that solution. And probably CrowdStrike will be the first ISV, first independent software vendor that will introduce an AI security solution in next couple of months. So the release, the GA date is actually June this year. So that's how security has evolved over a period of time. Now, I have almost spent 30 to 45 minutes explaining you how security has evolved in the last 25, 26 years and what it looks like today. This was very important for you need to understand, because otherwise you will get confused with multiple security solutions and you will feel I'm transforming myself into cybersecurity, but it's like an ocean. It has a lot more, and I don't know how many months or years it will take me to be at a level wherein I can qualify for a cybersecurity professional job. So I'm telling you right away, you can start from anywhere. You can start from an EDR, and EDR will qualify you to be in cybersecurity domain because you will know how to protect an endpoint. And later on, you can add more capabilities to your portfolio by learning additional security solutions so that you become more qualified and you get more responsibilities on your shoulder from your existing employer or from your future initiatives that you undertake. So that's how security has evolved over a period of time. Now I'll share these URLs. Before I share these URLs, I'll quickly explain this part. So what are indicators of compromise? Indicators of compromise basically means any attempt to compromise a system. And that attempt could be through an external factor, which is a hacker is trying to access your endpoint, hacker is trying to gain go on mute, or an insider, an employee who is not happy with the management, is trying to steal data, is trying to plug in a flash drive into an endpoint, and the flash drive contains some malware on it, or an employee who's trying to delete some data, an employee who's trying to access a database or a server. Go on mute. That's what indicators of compromises. So they are digital evidences. They are activities which has the potential to compromise the system, a network, or an application. That's indicators of compromise. Then comes indicators of attack. Now, indicators of compromise and indicators of attack, they are almost the same thing. So indicators of attack basically means uh, in your Windows event log, you identify an event ID that says that there was an unauthorized access attempt on this system. That's indicators of attack, right? Then comes indicators of misconfiguration. For example, a server is exposed on public internet. A server has port 3389 enabled from public internet. Anybody can connect to it. Or port 22 enabled, a Linux server. Anybody can SSH into it. Or port 143 enabled on database and exposed to public internet. So that's indicators of misconfiguration where a specific service or resource is misconfigured, and that misconfiguration results into an attack surface which will be discovered by threat actors who will then try to exploit that attack surface to gain access to that system, resource, or network. These are indicators. So in CrowdStrike, we'll configure all of these indicators as part of our configuration aspects. Now, these indicators, for example, open ports, port 3389 RDP, port 22 SSH, port 25 SMTP, port 80 HTTP, port 8080 we use for Linux Nginx. So these are certain common ports which are known to everyone. And if these ports are accessible, then you have I'm saying your device or your service has a potential to get compromised. And there are, as I said, there are threat actors which are constantly working as we speak. There are multiple threat actors, multiple bots, multiple programs or automated systems which are scanning the internet and looking for any response on these ports. So these are your indicators of compromise. Then comes outdated software application. If I'm using Windows 7 or Windows, let's say Vista or Windows XP today, would it not mean that I'm using an outdated software and application and for there is no security patch and sophisticated attack will be quick to corrupt that system or to affect that system? That's another indicators of compromise, outdated softwares and applications. I'm using an older version of Microsoft Edge or Google Chrome, which a threat actor can easily compromise or exploit. Missing security patches. So you are using the latest version of Windows 11, but you have not patched the operating system for the last 1 year. That is also a security misconfiguration. So they all qualify for IOAs, IOM, and IOCs, right? So I'll share these URLs with you. Uh, Make sure that you go through these URLs in your spare time so that you will get understanding of these concepts. This is very important from security perspective, not from CrowdStrike perspective, because while you work in security domain, you will speak these words and you will find yourself listening to or hearing these words or technical jargons all the time. So make sure that you go through these URLs and understand the concepts there. Okay. I'll take a pause here and see if there is any question from any participant before I move on to the design part. Now, let's design Falcon for a customer. Now, before we design Falcon for a customer, let me get you the understanding of Falcon enterprise architecture or how an EDR solution works. So, as
So,
I said, yeah.
Raghu sir, I'm sorry to cut you off. I have few questions here. So,
Please.
as you said, there are endpoints, only multiple flavors of endpoints. I just have one question
Mhm,
regarding the NVA and embedded OS, which consists of your router and switches and
mhm,
printers also.
mhm.
So, why these are not protected by EDR solutions? Is it just because they are their OSs are embedded, and whenever there is an update, the well-defined, I would say, agents or softwares which are provided by their respective vendors will be only supported or will stay with the updates, and the rest, third-party agents like sensors from CrowdStrike, agents from Defender, or any uh, EDR agent will be discarded or will be not present. Is that the reason?
Yeah, okay. So let me summarize that real quick. What Hardik was asking that if I go to an ATM, automated teller machine, that ATM also has an operating system. So, it shows you a UI. The UI says insert your card, provide the amount that you want to transact, and it gives you the amount. There is an operating system in the backend. When you are driving a car, your car has infotainment system, the UI. That UI has certain options and you use those options. That is an operating system in the backend, right? So there are multiple, in fact, a smartwatch that you wear, that smartwatch that can monitor your heart activity, your respiration rate, your stress level, and it can also count the number of steps that you walk. That also has an operating system in the backend. Now the question is, can CrowdStrike monitor, protect, remediate all of them? No. Why? Because A, these are intellectual property. These are IPs. So the vendors, the manufacturers or producers, they have never ever opened APIs. They have never ever made it public to security service providers that how have they configured it, which means security service providers have no visibility into the configuration. That is why they can't protect these devices, these IPs. That's the first aspect of it, Hardik. The second aspect is that any endpoint constitute a device which is actively used by a user. Now, ATM is also actively used by a user, but see how many users are there. There are multiple users, and there is very limited aspect that you can do. An endpoint needs protection when user has admin rights. So when you use a smartwatch, or when you use when you drive an SUV, or when you transact money from ATM machine, you don't have administrative configuration there. You are more of an end user. You can't even configure anything. You can't change the wallpaper. You can't make any configuration changes. So any technology which has very limited usage aspect would not qualify for an EDR protection. Technology that has extensively active usage, configuration changes aspect would qualify for an EDR solution. That is why these devices, your smartwatch, your infotainment systems, or ATM machines, they are basically using embedded OS. They do not qualify for an EDR. And to protect these devices, the OEM itself has their own way and method to protect these devices. So no EDR solution today has the capability to protect an embedded OS, because the APIs are not available, or the OEM or the ISV doesn't have visibility into how that is architected or configured. Hope that answers your question.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Just follow-up question on this one. Then how about the router and switches? I do understand these
Same is the
also
case
have
with
the
same is
have
the case with routers and switches. They also have embedded OS, right? They most of them works on embedded Linux. They use
Mhm.
lightweight operating system, which is Linux. And routers and switches, they don't need active protection. They all
Yes.
you need is to dump the logs so that you can identify who tried to access a router or switch, whether they tried to do any configuration changes, was there an external attempt to tamper with the router configuration. That results into the log. So they have the logging capability. So you basically configure that device to uh, export and stream those
Mhm.
logs into a SIEM and source solution,
SIM
which is
solution.
NG SIEM of CrowdStrike. Okay.
Got,
Sentinel,
got you.
Microsoft Sentinel, NG SIEM, or Sentinel One, AI SIEM, or
Mhm.
Google SecOps, Splunk and QRadar.
Understood.
That's what you do. That's the reason
Understood,
I
sir.
said that an organization comprises of multiple devices, multiple applications and workloads, and not all of them qualify for EDR. That is why an organization must have a combination of proactive plus reactive security. So if you have a combination of proactive plus reactive security, you would have included all the security solutions into one console, and that's where XDR comes into the picture. So if you have seen Microsoft Defender XDR console, it has
Mhm.
the capability to ingest detections, alerts, and incidents from multiple Microsoft products. In fact, with integration with third parties also. So you can ingest CrowdStrike incidents into Microsoft Defender XDR because it has a connector available for it. You can ingest Tenable Qualys vulnerability management scans data into Defender XDR. So an XDR solution is as effective depending on the integration that it provides. And remember, some ISVs, they intentionally do not expose APIs. They do not provide API access to third parties because they don't want their product to get exposed to third parties. Because when you provide API based access to your product, you're allowing a third party to access the configuration of your product up to a certain extent. And that is how the other company would probably develop their own in next coming months. And that's how this technology is evolving. You see one service provider introduces a solution, and probably after a couple of months or a year, you see multiple providers providing the same solution, right? So that's why you have
Yeah.
multiple vendors. If you just look for Gartner website and say what are the top 10 email security solutions, you will see a list of 50 solutions, out of which top 10 will be mentioned. Same is the case with EDR. If I go to Gartner website and say, Gartner, please tell me which is the leading EDR solution in the market, so Gartner can get me that information real quick, or I can get that information from internet also. Let's ask this question from Gartner. So top 10 EDR by Gartner. Okay. So extended detection and response, XDR solutions, it says we are looking for EDR. These are XDR solutions. You can see CrowdStrike is also here. Why? Because CrowdStrike now has this capability. Cortex has this capability, which was acquired by Palo Alto. Then you have other solutions also. So when you look for Gartner, now this is showing, so I want to know EDR by Gartner. Now you see EDR solutions by Gartner. Now I did not do anything. I just typed EDR solution by Gartner. This is the homepage of Gartner, and you will notice that CrowdStrike is on the top. Is everyone able to see this?
Yes, sir.
So this shows you the credibility of CrowdStrike, guys. That CrowdStrike has been rated as #1 EDR solution by Gartner, not this year, for the last 5 year in a row. And that's why CrowdStrike knowledge is very important, because it has a great market value. When you put CrowdStrike knowledge in your resume, you will see recruiters, approaching you for opportunities. So CrowdStrike is the #1 solution, and you can see it has been a customer choice. It has also received customer choice award for the current year also. Then at the second place comes SentinelOne, which is another company which is also gaining momentum, or which has also evolved significantly or improved significantly in the last couple of years. So SentinelOne. Now this entire training is available on my YouTube channel. There is a minimal fee that you need to pay to YouTube, not to me, to have access to that training, because based on the popularity of the content, based on the length of that content and infrastructure cost that YouTube incurs, YouTube sometimes puts a price tag. So YouTube keeps on doing that on, on ad hoc basis. Sometimes you're able to access the entire playlist without paying a single penny. Sometimes you will be able to, sometimes you need to make payment. Sometimes you can access some of the videos free of cost, some of the videos as a price tag. So I absolutely have no control on it. So please, if you see a price tag there, don't just think that I have put that price tag. Okay, so that's SentinelOne. And then you have additional solutions. For example, Sophos is here, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint is here, Trellix is here, Symantec is here, Trend Vision is here. Then there are multiple solutions you can see. Right now, you will not see Cortex here, because Cortex is at the bottom. Why? Cortex is more of an XDR solution now. They have marketed themselves as an XDR solution. So when it comes to EDR, they are not a full-blown EDR solution. So that's where Cortex is coming here. Then you have a lot of solutions here. You can see. Now you can see these solutions based on the specific market segment, specific company size also. So let's say if I want to look for a EDR solution for a business who is $10 billion plus USD annual revenue, I can also select the industry. I can also select the region. Let's say a business in business with this market value in North America. What should be a great EDR solution for them? So based on these filters, I can also see the solutions. Now you can see CrowdStrike continues to be at #1 position. However, Sophos is now replaced by Trellix. Now Trellix is quite good in North America, specifically for organizations at this value proposition, right? Then Semantic, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, Singularity, and then other security solutions. So based on what you pick and choose, you will notice that these solutions will continue to change. For example, now I'm looking for Europe. The same 10 billion plus US dollar revenue, annual recurring revenue of a business in Europe, what will be the solution? So now I can see that in Europe, it has been replaced by Semantic because as I told you, that CrowdStrike is a company which is quite popular in North America. In Europe, there are multiple solutions. So it doesn't mean that it will not find a place in Gartner's rating for Europe. The CrowdStrike will probably be at 4th or 5th position then. So Semantic is at #1, Microsoft Defender, CrowdStrike is at 3rd position now when it comes to Europe. And if I go to Asia Pacific for the same business size, let's see where does CrowdStrike is. So CrowdStrike in Asia Pacific is once again at the top place. So there cannot be more reasons to understand the significance and importance of this training session and the value proposition that it will bring on the table by adding certain, by giving you an edge over others after you add this knowledge into your resume. And for me, who is somebody who doesn't focus on the configuration, you need to understand the value proposition of it. So for the last 1 hour, I'm trying to explain the value proposition of technology, how technology has evolved, and where does CrowdStrike fall into the picture. Now, configuration would not take much time. Before configuration, you need to have confidence on your investment that if committed investment of your time and substantial investment from capital perspective, to me for next couple of months for all the weekends, you could have, personal plans also, but then you probably postpone those plans. There is something for you and you will remember this investment. You will appreciate this investment for the rest of your life because that's how I work with my participants. It's not a business, it's not a transaction. This is more of a connect that I do with my people and help them to upskill and grow in their respective job domain and career. Okay, so this was about the value proposition of CrowdStrike and technology aspects, how technology has evolved over a period of time.